The first question this week comes from Baptiste, and he asks, what do I think about kind of combining power building and Renaissance periodization principles? So how does that work? Like powerlifting and combining MEV, MRV, and stuff like that. And I would say that the general principles of training within your MEV and MRV still apply, regardless of whether you are a powerlifter or a sport athlete or something like that. Now, how would I go about powerlifting or creating kind of a power building style program? I would really prefer to have specific blocks to where you focus on either hypertrophy or strength rather than trying to combine them each in a single cycle. And that just comes from my experience of personally trying to combine them together for a very long time and really not getting anywhere with either one. And I think that it works out a lot better if you have a specific focus for a specific block and really focus on either hypertrophy or bodybuilding. So that doesn't mean that you still can't do both. And what I would do is I would just run a couple of hypertrophy mesocycles followed by a more strength mesocycle and work things that way. So if you want to be really strong and you also want to grow a lot of muscle, I might do 2 to 4 hypertrophy mesocycles in a row. And then I might follow that by 1 to 2 strength mesocycles in a row and repeat that process. And I would much prefer that compared to trying to combine both in the same exact workouts. Just because I think that you're going to run into some potential fatigue issues with, you're trying to do high volumes, but also express your strength, and that could be problematic. So what would the differences look like in these programs? Well, a hypertrophy mesocycle, you're probably going to be working in higher rep ranges on average, so 8 to 15 range on average, where a strength meso might be more so like the 3 to 6 range on average. You're probably going to do a little bit lower overall volumes in the strength mesocycle. So maybe instead of working from 10 to 20 sets, you hang around that 10 to 14 set range. So you're not so fatigued to where you can't express your strength. Also, probably eating at maintenance calories for that strength block. So that's how I would go about it, Baptiste. I would focus more so on, hey, let's run specific strength and hypertrophy blocks and program that throughout the training year rather than, hey, let's try to focus on strength and hypertrophy in the single block. All right. So I hope that helps you out, my man. Next question comes from Hector, and he asks, counting sets for direct versus like indirect work. So, for example, if you were training your chest and doing a bench press, would you count that for both your chest and triceps or just your chest? Personally, I only count direct sets. So I would only count that for my chest. Now, in the literature, they often count it as both. So in the literature, they would probably count that as chest and triceps, 1 set for each. And for rowing movements, they would probably count that as back and biceps. So in the literature, it usually counts both anything for a primary mover. So back and bis on pulling, chest and tris on pressing, on leg movements, they might count everything for the glutes and the quads and stuff like that. But I personally count just direct sets. And for me, it just is more so practical. It keeps things easy. It keeps things really straightforward. Just everything that we train directly counts as 1 direct set. And no matter what you decide, there's no best route here. No matter what you decide, as long as you keep it consistent and you adjust based on how you're actually responding, you adjust on your soreness, if you adjust on how good of pumps you're getting, if you adjust on your recovery, stuff like that, it will work itself out. Because as long as you're adjusting on those things, it's going to make sure that you're training within your MEV and MRV. And By definition, if you're training within your MEV and MRV, you're doing an effective amount of volume to grow. All right. So I don't think it matters a ton, but keep it consistent. I like counting just direct sets because it keeps things easy. In the literature, it usually counts both anything for primary movers, like I talked about, but really, I think it's whatever makes most sense for you. Keep it consistent, adjust on how you're actually responding, and it should work itself out. All right, great question. Number 3, what advice would you give to someone just starting out? So maybe they're new to lifting, stuff like that, and would keep things very kind of basic and focus on maybe just 2 things at the start. For one, nutritionally, let's eat enough protein, and that's basically it. Seriously, I just think, hey, if you are literally just starting out, let's focus on eating enough protein and then eat to your hunger cues like you've been doing. Spread that protein out throughout the day. You're going to make progress. Start building healthier eating habits like getting enough fruit and vegetables in, having generally 80% of your diet healthy whole foods, and eat enough protein. You're going to see great results starting out. So that's where I would start nutritionally. Protein, and then generally cleaning up the diet a little bit to be a little bit healthier, fruits and veg, stuff like that. Training wise, I would also keep things very simple. I would focus on, hey, first and foremost, let's make sure our technique is dialed in. Let's make sure that we're getting a good mind-muscle connection on exercise. Let's make sure we're using a full range of motion and that sort of thing. And having a coach or a personal trainer in person, online, it's a little bit more difficult with form and stuff like that because I'm not there with you, but it can still help a little bit with video checks and that sort of thing. But technique number 1, let's get that locked in. Number 2, hey, let's start off on the low side. Let's start off with like 3 or 4 sets per muscle per session within a few reps from failure. And that's going to be plenty. And then after doing that, and maybe we're training a muscle 2 times per week with 3 to 5 sets per session. After we're doing that, we can scale up if your technique is good and if you're noticing that you're not really getting very sore anymore or you're not noticing you're getting good pumps anymore, then we can scale up. But start on that lower end. Like if it's your first session ever, I would start with like 1 hard set per muscle and move on from there. And then go to 2 and then scale from there. But if you're just starting out, 3 to 5 sets per muscle per session, a couple of times a week, focusing on your technique, focusing on your protein intake, cleaning up that diet a little bit, I think that you're going to see great results. And then after several months of that, then we can start getting more kind of nuanced into deloading and that sort of thing. But hey, if you make those your focus for the first several months, you're going to put yourself in a good spot. So that's what I would kind of recommend starting out. Email me if you have any questions. I'd be happy to give you more sound advice and any specific questions that you might have. All right. And it's ryan@revivestronger.com. Next question. Do you ever wish you hadn't learned to track macros so you could just be normal with food? Oh. Sometimes. But, tracking macros and getting my shit together regarding my nutrition has completely changed my life for the better. And that's why I like being a coach and doing what I do every single day. And if I hadn't learned to track macros and track my calories and stuff like that, I think that I very well could have continued to spin my wheels and not really get anywhere and wouldn't be in the position I am today. So it's really, really helped me. But there's downsides to it, man. And I think that there's downsides that people aren't even aware of. And it's things like me not wanting to spend a day doing stuff with friends and family because, man, I'm going to have to worry about when I'm getting my food in and stuff like that and that sort of thing. And I can't just look at food and eat what I want because I just know the numbers now. And it's like, it's hard for me to even want to have like tasty foods because like considering my calorie budget, it's just not worth it, you know? So sometimes I do feel that. Now, what's really helped me is loosening up the reins and being more flexible when needed. And basically, what I do is during the week, it's very convenient for me to track my macros, track calories, weigh foods out, stuff like that. I work from home. I have a very routine like schedule. I'm pretty robotic in that. So it's very easy. Now, if it's the weekend and I plan to do something or something like that, I really don't worry about it a whole lot. And I focus on hitting my protein, and then I can still have like breakfast and still get a nice solid meal in there. And I can always pack a protein shake if I'm going somewhere. But if I'm going to eat out and stuff like that, I really don't worry about it a whole lot. And I just try to stick to kind of nutritious, healthier foods. And I make fun of myself for being the health guy. And it's like, hey, you guys know I'm not going to order dessert and stuff like that. And it's cool. Like, as long as you're there with your friends, they should appreciate that and your time and that sort of thing. But I really try to loosen up the reins on the weekend. And if that means that I'm going to fast for a longer period of time and go without protein or pack protein shakes and stuff like that, or maybe have to eyeball some stuff, I'm okay with that because I know that for 5 or 6 days out of the week, I'm on point. And at the end of the day, we're really trying to eat enough protein and either gain or lose weight at the rate that we're wanting to do. And we don't have to track calories to do that. But I do think that tracking calories, it can avoid a lot of the bullshit that goes around with, oh, this diet works better than this. And it really allows you to understand the fundamental principles of what's in foods and why diets work and that sort of thing. And I really think that's helpful. But I think that it's really hard to detach from that once you know it. And it's really hard to just not pay attention to the numbers and not let that affect your lifestyle and things that you enjoy to do. And I know in the past, like, I like going to Hawkeye games with my dad. And sometimes that would make me worry about, man, we're going to be tailgating the morning and then at the Hawkeye game the entire day. What am I going to do for my food? What's going on here? And then I just had to be like, hey, what's more important at the end of the day? Maximizing your nutrition 365 days of the year, or maximizing your nutrition 300 days of the year, and then on 60 days, 1 or 2 days a week, you ballpark things a little bit and are maybe a little bit less precise, but you get to spend quality time with friends, family, and that sort of thing. And what are you going to look back on and be happy about? And what would you regret? And I think that I would severely regret not doing those things because I wanted to better hit my macros. And I think that I would be very, very angry with myself if I did that. So, and I think that in those situations, you can still have like your first and last meal of the day. Like you can still have your protein before bed and breakfast. And then if you bring a protein shake in the middle of that and you have 3 solid protein feedings and you kind of eat to your hunger cues and don't go too crazy and also don't severely restrict yourself, I think that you're going to be in a good spot. And I think that's almost as optimal as hitting things to a T. So I totally understand the feeling there of wishing you never learned to track your macros, but I think it can be helpful. And I think that developing the skill of turning that off over time is really helpful. And I would just try to be aware of when you are not allowing yourself to do some things day to day that you really enjoy and that you might regret in the future. All right. So that's how I approach that. I think that practicing loosening up the reins 1 day a week is a good idea for the most part. And especially for me during my deload, like I usually take 4 or 5 days completely off. And during those days, I really try to pull back the reins on nutrition and really just focus on protein and eating to my hunger signals because I'm really just trying to maintain at that point anyways. So that really helps me kind of practice that. So I hope that helps. I definitely understand what you're getting at there, though. Number 5, what hobbies am I into? So I'm so lame, but I like reading and I like learning about investing, finances, that sort of thing really interests me. And nutrition, fitness stuff, of course. I also like fishing. I really like to snowboard, but I don't go nearly as often as I'd like just because it's like I just don't want to go alone, and then getting friends together to go. It's just scheduling and stuff like that. So I love snowboarding, but don't do it very often. But fishing, Hawkeye football games, like I just talked about, and reading, that sort of thing is kind of what I'm into. All right. So hopefully you like this Q&A. Do you like this setup here? I don't know if I like it, but let me know. See you next Sunday.